Hello, my name is Justin Brown and I am the founder and lead investigator of Interface Death. In this video, I want to give you a very in-depth history of the oldest operational theater in Ohio called the Majestic Theater, located in Chillicothe, Ohio. We very much desire to learn the history of this location and investigate the paranormal claims if possible. The theater is one of the most important historical structures not only in Chillicothe, but in our country. We are especially interested in the Masonic history of the building and its significance to the community. Masonry, or Freemasonry, is the oldest fraternity in the world. No one knows just how old it is because the actual origins have been lost in time. Probably it arose from the guilds of the stonemasons who built the castles and cathedrals of the Middle Ages. Possibly, they were influenced by the Knights Templar, a group of Christian warrior monks formed in 1118 to help protect pilgrims making the trips to Holy Land. In this documentary, we provide historical accuracy concerning the history that influences the paranormal claims at this location. In our experience, truth is much more intriguing than skewed and exaggerated facts that pertain to this fascinating structure.
Alright, for the record, I'm Kevin Coleman. I'm a local historian, tour guide, preservationist, other things, storyteller, if you need to take down that poster, radio news reporter, all sorts of things. And I'm on the board of the Majestic Theater mainly because I'm sort of the de facto historian, architectural historian for it. So I've got a pretty good in-depth view of the building, far more in-depth than just about anyone else because I've crawled into about every hole that is possible to crawl into in the building.
Awesome.
This is our one of our downtown landmarks, and what I think is probably the most documented haunted building in Ross County, if not the Saddle Valley, especially with the loss of the Emmett House. The original building on this site was built in 1808, and it was a cooperative effort between a bank that operated on the ground floor and the the Masonic Lodge of Chillicothe, the Silo Masons, I forget the exact term, but they had the upstairs. So they were there in probably just a smaller building, probably a little bigger than that, from 1808 until April 1st, 1852. That is when the worst fire to happen in Chillicothe began. At one point, there's a little booklet written up on the Great Fire. But at one point, a woman says to a man that there's a fire started just up the alley. And he said, yes ma'am, that's the 1st of April. But at the end of the day, 1/4 of the entire town was a smoldering ruin, including the home of the Masons here in the corner. Fortunately, no one died in it, few injuries, but major loss to the town. And the Masons were not alone in their losses. It took them a year to regroup, and they started building this building here in almost exactly a year later in 1853, April. And it took them about 9 months to complete the building, so full gestation. There was already an event inside in October of 1853, so that's 5 months into the construction period. So clearly it was roofed over and had at least first floor, main floor was finished. Now this was designed by Russell West, who was a prominent 19th century painter and one of the architects for the Ohio State House. This is, the architectural style is sort of a higher version of Italianate, if you know your styles. It's more refined, more upper class. It's called Renaissance Revival. Renaissance Italy, derived from Renaissance Italy. So it's been altered many, many times. The saw has like 3-4 layers of alterations to it. The core of the building is there. The earliest photo of the building dates to 1896. It's in a booklet that's been reprinted, and you'll see a larger photo as you go up the stairs. But this is what it originally, well, it already had some alterations by this point. But you can see brick facade, rather plain, simple, had stone quoins, ornamental stone blocks in the ground floor, no marquee, and another angled pretty much the same thing. So, major alterations. In 1867, the Masons added some more to it. Sounds like they almost ran out of money and didn't get things finished. Took them another decade, finally pulling together enough funds to do so. And by the way, the estimate for the building was $10,000 or less. Translated into today's money, that's about $266,000. That's small compared to some of the renovations done to it. So, the Masons built this with the Opera House, American version of a playhouse, mid-19th century version of a playhouse, on the ground floor. That paid for their building, paid for the rest of it. On the top floor, on that third floor, depending on how you define it, that was their lodge rooms, 3 main lodge rooms. And they were there for about 60 years. Moving along, chronologically, in 1876, another opera house was planned to be renovated from an old church, and so the Masons decided they'd better get a leg up on the competition. So they did the second largest renovation of this building. A big part of that involved rebuilding the west wall, and I'll point that out to you in a minute. But it was enlarged, refined, enhanced. It probably had a balcony, or more accurately a mezzanine at the start. It looks like it was just flat. I've seen the floor joists inside it. And later on it's been angled up and angled up steeper and such. So that's when they probably started to angle the mezzanine. Renovation of the stage and fly space and space behind that. And also they had a removable floor that could be added to create a level floor, because the seating was on an incline. They could have level floor level with the stage, where people could have balls or skating rinks.
That's cool.
Continuing 1883, another important date. That's when the Knights Templar are said to have been painted, and some of the painted walls in the upstairs, which you'll see. More renovations in the 1890s. In 1904, actually 1903, the Masons start building a new building a block over on Main Street. That's why this can still be called Masonic Alley or Masonic Avenue, because Masonic building moved from one point in the alley to the other point. But they sold it in 1904 to the current manager of the theater operations, Richard Wolfe. And he did some renovations to his newly owned building, some required by state law, including a new asbestos stage curtain. You've got to have that stage curtain in case you get a fire, protect the audience. Of course, they may die of lung cancer 20 years later, but expansion of the stage yet again, fire escapes added to the side. In 1908, they started showing movies here, which required a fireproof or fire-resistant door to the projection booth. I'll point that out to you. And of course, those were silent movies. Now in 1909, there's a topic that I just blogged about, the Majestic Arch. And that was installed just a little ways down here in 1909 and was lit in October. And originally stood about at the far end of the Majestic courtyard there. It's said that that was rescued from Columbus, where there were a series of arches over High Street and other streets were being taken down, scavenged. Supposedly this was bought from a scrapper or something. However, I'm thinking it's not. But you can check out my blog and see part 1 of the whole story of this. It's a wonderful steel arch. They were somewhat popular late 19th, early 20th centuries. Whole long story. Now in 1915, the 3 Myers brothers buy the building. They changed the name to the Majestic Theater. Before then it was better known as the Masonic Opera House. So they added the stucco that's on the front. You can see light sockets underneath the cornice that they added midway up. There's other lights that they've added. Other renovations inside. May have modified the upstairs, the third floor a little bit, but that was probably the last time that space saw any really significant changes. In 1915, probably at the urging of the new owners of the building, the arch was moved up to its current location. Now, 1918 was pretty much the largest and most, well, about equally second, one of the two huge changes to the building, and possibly the most expensive. That was when Camp Sherman opened up north of town. That was a World War I Army training camp. About 2,000 buildings, about 2,000 acres. The buildings were completed about one every 10 minutes. So massive undertaking. It swelled the population of Chillicothe from 16,000 to about 60,000. So massive housing crunch as well as a massive entertainment crunch. A new theater was planned for the old canal lands. The canal had been abandoned for about a decade, called the Sherman Theater. So apparently the owners of Majestic decided they'd better get a leg up on competition and renovate to prepare for that competition. So they invested majorly in this building. It closed down, I forget for how long, several months. The first canopy was added, just a simple, possibly glass roof thing. Not sure if it had electric lights on it. Yes, it did. It was called an electric canopy. The stained glass windows were added to it. You'll see them nicely on the inside too. The interior was renovated into its current configuration. When you walk in, it's 1918. That was the auditorium enlarged by rebuilding the stage larger and deeper back. They removed some walls, rebuilt the back part of the building. Let's see. Dressing rooms were built under the stage, which we might be able to see if we don't inconvenience the musicians. The balcony probably had wings added to it in the front. And it also got a ventilation system at that time, which can move 35,000 cubic feet of air a minute, which would cause a complete change of auditorium air every 5 minutes. And I'll point out the air shafts for that. It's an interesting system. It actually goes, shafts go all the way up the front of the building, through the attic, down one side of the arch to the fans. All that work was a $70,000 estimate. That translates into today's money about $1 million.
Oh my God.
And that was about 3 months' work. I really need to revise my chronology. I've got notes scribbled all over it. 3 months' work. It opened. After 3 nights of being open, it was shut down because there was a flu pandemic in the fall of 1918. And that is where a lot of the ghost stories come from, where the same number of soldiers died at Camp Sherman as did in the bombardment of Pearl Harbor to start World War II. So, a little coincidental number there. But the two Army contractors, the two undertakers who had contract with the Army to do their embalming, were just overwhelmed by it. The two undertakers also happened to be right next to the Majestic Theater. One was probably in that gray house there, just across the alley. And the other was in the brick building where the gentleman is coming out of, right over there. So, there were also, I think, Army undertakers that came in and helped out, but still, most of the operations were here. So the bodies would be embalmed in the undertaker's offices, and then they would be put in coffins and warehoused. The Majestic was turned into a morgue. Now there are stories about this that have become a little
skewed,
convoluted, skewed, exaggerated, whatnot. And it's said that the soldiers were embalmed in the Majestic, and bodies were stacked like cordwood on the stage. Exaggeration. They were embalmed elsewhere, but they were brought in, and the filled coffins were stored in the theater. The seats were taken out. Wooden benches were built on level platforms in the auditorium, and that's where they were kept. And
crazy.
Maybe there were empty coffins stacked like cordwood on the stage. Maybe there were filled coffins. It wasn't just bare bodies. But also at that time, the Majestic was a place of recreation for the soldiers, so there would have been many happy memories here. There's one photo that shows 3, 4 trucks full of soldiers parked in front of the Majestic, and they may have been soldiers recovering from the flu who came here to enjoy a picture show. Not sure. Yeah, probably because of the time frame. Probably would have been after the flu pandemic ran its course and things were put back to normal. Now in 1928 and 1929, the creation of talkies, movies with sound, inspired a $40,000 retrofit of the building. And that calculates to about $519,000 right now. Then, in the middle of the Depression, in 1936, the building got air conditioning. And this is using, everyone likes to say the Taves Valley Aquifer. It's just a well out in the alley. It's 50 feet deep, this little subterranean room under there. Water's pumped out of that well, and then through coils in front of the fan unit, which I believe was the one installed in 1918. So it's simply using groundwater to cool the air. And you know that caves and groundwater is cooler because it's insulated from the heat of the sun. So, very simple system. In 1937, the current marquee was installed. I believe it was actually added to the pre-existing marquee. They just added walls to it. And also the front ground floor was refaced with milk glass to cover the old stone coins. In 1971, the building was sold to Harley and Evelyn Bennett, and they added the brick on the first floor, which I wish they hadn't, but it's there. They continue to operate it as a for-profit business. In 1990, a non-profit was formed to buy the building, and they eventually did that, eventually replaced or renovated the seats in the auditorium. About 1900, or about 2000, paintings upstairs, the wall paintings were uncovered, and there were some sample restorations done of the paint that came in and showed what the paint looked like if restored. And by 2008, we had a big windstorm, the derecho, you may remember, and it blasted off half our roof, so we had to replace that. Then about 2012, another storm caused the cornice on the front to start sagging. And it was a large metal cornice. I think it was added in one of the earlier renovations, and that had to be removed, and we haven't gotten it back up yet. And also about the same time period, the marquee was renovated, the neon was taken off, and the original pattern of tracer lights was put back on it. And if you go to our Facebook page or website, you'll see my photos of the lights in action. So, one more thing before we step in. Let's take a look at the side of the building. I told you in 1876 that the building had its big renovation. If you look at the side of the building, you'll see some stone blocks partway back on the side on the ground floor. Originally, the building was sort of a thick L shape, and there was like a light well behind those stone blocks because they didn't know what was going to be built next to them. It ended up being a house, which later became a hotel, which later became a hotel owned by the theater, where a lot of the actors stayed. That was demolished about 2000. And later on we lost 2 commercial buildings. So we have a wonderful courtyard that's very busy in the summer. But anyhow, right at that point, the wall angled back in and then out and left about 7-8 foot gap of space between it and the property line. In 1876, that entire back part of the wall was rebuilt wider and the old wall demolished. And there's clear evidence of that in the attic where the trusses holding up the roof have been reconfigured for a wider width. Now you can't really see anything of that on the inside. It's been reconfigured several times since then. Also notice the circular light, the oculus, on the 3rd floor. You'll see that when we get up there. And then last, before we go in, Blood Alley. That's another legend that's been a little garbled over the years. But the story is, when the soldiers were embalmed in the Majestic Theater, which they weren't, the body fluids were tossed out on the alley, which they weren't. On this alley, which is the wrong alley. Again, the soldiers were embalmed in the Undertakers, then the embalmed bodies were taken and stored in the Majestic. Chillicothe had a modern sewage system at that time, and all those body fluids would have gone down the drain. And don't worry, there's far worse things to go down the drain. They would not have been tossed out on the street. One speculation that Camp Sherman aficionado has said is maybe the streets that were paved with red brick were washed down during the flu pandemic in the hopes that that would help keep things clean. People saw that and, oh, that looks like blood. Yeah, I hear there are draining bodies around here. But also, apparently the alley, the name Blood Alley, accurate or not, was originally applied to the alley behind the theater, not beside. So that's what's come up with some current interest in Camp Sherman and getting some more accurate oral histories and written histories. So, without further ado, let us enter the historic landmark Haunted Majestic.
Kevin now gives us a tour of the inside, floor by floor. Paul Pollard, president of the Performing Arts for the theater, is conducting a rehearsal for an upcoming event as we soak in the brilliant history and architecture. As we explore the mezzanine level, Kevin points out a storage room that was the site of a supernatural encounter by a local paranormal researcher named Neil Parks. Neil's story explains that he saw a janitor mopping a single spot of the men's restroom after viewing a film at the theater on Halloween weekend of 1996. He began to make small talk with the janitor and found it very odd that he did not acknowledge him. As he washed his hands, Neil began to speak to him again. This time the janitor looks at Neil with a piercing stare and walked out of the restroom and up to the lobby area. Neil finished washing his hands and returned to the lobby and found no trace of the janitor. Suddenly he felt a strange sensation as if someone was staring at him from the staircase above. As he looked upward, he seen the janitor grasping the handrail and glaring down at him with a puzzled yet concerned expression, as if he was confused. Neil immediately became intrigued by this and rushed up the stairs to the next level to confront this man. As he reached the landing of the next level, the janitor walked straight through a closed door and disappeared. In amazement, Neil opens the door and finds a cleaning supply closet with absolutely no sign of the janitor. As a feeling of dread quickly came over him, he began to notice some photographs of staff members from 1950s hung in the hallway. After examining the photos, he finds the photo of the janitor he just saw just as he appeared to him. To add to the spooky encounter, I have a feeling of being watched in the same area as Neil's encounter. I pull out my EMF meter and begin to take readings. I get a significant spike in the area that I could not debunk or explain, and as I report this to the group, Kevin begins to tell us about Neil's story of the ghostly janitor. Right after we view the room where the encounter ended, I begin to hear a whispery interference over my headset. Was this related to the possible paranormal phenomena in this exact area? It's too early to tell, but it was, in my opinion, significant and noteworthy.
We did have our theater office in one of the commercial buildings that burned down 2004 or 5. Apparently a window air conditioner started the fire, and it's severely damaged 2 floors of one building, 1/3 of the other, and buildings were demolished. But we also lost our archives of historic posters, movie posters, and all sorts of things.
I could have swore I just heard whispering. That was weird. It was like a... It was weird. I don't know. I haven't heard that.
Applause or something?
No, it was right in my headphones. It was like, I don't know. It was just weird. I just want to mark it. Go ahead. Sorry. As we ascend to the top floor where the Masonic Lodge was located, I get hit with a very strong electric charge. In my experience, this is an indication of the presence of spirit energy. This feeling remains throughout the top floor as we indulge in the rich Masonic history Kevin Coleman is providing us. Much secrecy and mystery surrounds the Masonic fraternity, and this definitely adds to our intrigue of the building. Evidence of the Masonic artwork is revealed as our guide takes us through the lodge area. The group's psychic senses start to tingle in many areas of this floor before we head down to the main theater area. Unfortunately, my recording equipment runs out of battery life before we check out the theater area, but we offer photos of this area on our Facebook page. Before we end this documentary of our tour, I will provide more historical recounts that our guide offers us on this floor.
You can see things have shifted a little bit.
What the heck? You see that?
I got him too.
Soon as I came up here. I don't know what's up with that.
See, here is original 1853. Of course, some is 1876, a little later.
Now that's gone, that feeling. It's like it bursted like a bubble. That was weird. Wow.
The rest of that upper floor has been stripped off because what's underneath is more important than that. Really? This is the Tyler's room. This is the entrance hall. Presumably there was someone here, a doorman. And yes, that's the hoop you just walked on. Over the years, leaks have caused the ceiling, and then when we lost the cornice, pigeons have colonized it. We've got them mostly kept out. And I've got a section out of it that discusses the Majestic. Now, aside from her husband being, having been high in the order of the Masons, she just has, there's so much history in this building. This has possibly more pages in her book dedicated to one building than even the public square, which is a very historic spot. But this is by Pat Menert, and it's the buildings and people of Chillicothe, and each volume is 4 different streets. So Water, Paint, 2nd, Main, 4th, 5th, and Caldwell, Church High, etc. So you can find those in our public library too if you want to do some research, reading up on this building on your own.
That's good to know, Chris.
Yeah. In 1876, the local newspaper was given a tour of the whole building. So this is all the text from that describes how things were going to be at that point in time.
I feel a draft.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
There is a broken window in there, and the stairway door is open. So it's just trying to be an honest debunker.
Yeah, I just feel a draft.
Yeah. On ascending another flight of, we had an opportunity of inspecting the building this week, November 1883. Okay, I'm misremembering things. This was after its renovation, second renovation. We had an opportunity of inspecting the building this week. On ascending another flight of stairs, you enter the Tyler's or reception room. A neat room 12 by 14 feet, the floor covered with oilcloth and furnished with racks for hats and clothing, and all heated by a stove. To the east of this is the kitchen, communicating with the banquet hall, also a room used by the Royal Arch Chapter especially. Entering the spacious hall, 8 feet wide and 44 feet long, you find it carpeted with Brussels carpeting, and lighted by a pendant gas fixtures of polished brass. The ceiling and walls frescoed, the latter in designs of Templar arms artistically grouped. On the right, you enter the banquet hall, 16 by 44 feet, the ceiling of which is beautifully frescoed in floral designs, while life-size figures of knights in full armor keep watch and ward on the walls. On the opposite or left side of the hallway is another room, the interior, not however visible to eyes profane. Also the armory of the commandery, 11 by 22 feet, neatly papered and painted, around the sides of which are arranged the cases for the uniforms of the knights, which, as seen through the glass doors of the cases when completed, will form a pleasing finish to the apartment. So, yeah, this is presumably that is the room not visible to eyes profane. And the armory, which had the oculus window. Passing on the north of the armory, we come to the council chamber, a room 22 by 33 feet. This room will be used at different times by these several bodies. It is a handsome room. So again, room not for eyes profane.
Right.
The armory.
Right.
And in the council chamber, a room 22 by 33 feet. This room will be used at different times by several bodies. It is a handsome room, carpeted with Brussels, lighted by two double pendants of polished brass. The walls and ceiling frescoed in the latest style of the art, flat fresco without molding. The room is heated by a handsome stove of the grossiest pattern, whatever that is. Leaving the council chamber, we enter the lodge room proper, which is located in the north end of the building and extending across the whole width of it, being 33 by 46 feet. This room, in connection with the council chamber, is used by all Masonic bodies as occasion requires. This is the handsomest room of the suite. The walls and ceilings are frescoed in the same style of art, but of much richer design than those of the council chamber. The style is elaborate but neat, and the artist has shown correct taste both in beauty of design and harmony of coloring, as well as consummate skill in the execution of his work. Victorian foofery. The walls are wainscoted in oil-finished cherry and white maple, the same material being used in the doors and panel work of the room. On three sides of the room is a raised platform for seating the members, while across the fourth or east end is a stage, ascent to which is by 3 steps. Very biblical symbolism there. The center of the stage is screened by an elliptic arch sprung from massive pilasters or a canopy over the seat of the presiding officer. In the center of the arch is the traditional keystone. The structured painting of this portion of the room has a very fine effect. In the rear of the master's seat is a painting intended to represent the inner courts of King Solomon's temple. This is a splendid piece of scenic art. The perspective is so perfect that the beholder is tempted to start the walk down the long colonnade and examine the numerous apartments to be seen extending far down below the columns that stand out in bold relief. The artist who executed this piece of work is also engaged on some other that still further shows his skill in the art, but which, however, cannot be shown to the uninitiated. And more stuff that is gone and you can't see from where I can lead you. So there's a description that's copied in Pat Menard's book on 2nd Street on the Majestic Theater. It's a fantastic resource here.
I would like to thank you for taking the time to watch this documentary of our tour of the Majestic Theater in Chillicothe, Ohio. We want to especially thank Kevin Coleman for providing us with a very in-depth tour concerning the architectural and historical significance of the building. We urge you to visit the building if you are in the area and take a tour so you can see this magnificent theater for yourself, as all the proceeds of the admission go to the restoration and maintenance of the building. It is very important that this building is preserved and that the restoration can continue. If you wish to take the tour or make a donation, please contact Kevin Coleman via email or the website provided. The paranormal claims that some have reported will never overshadow the historical splendor of this building, and I personally will make an effort to promote its history accurately by providing reliable historical sources like this video, and hopefully many more to come. If spirits do occupy the Majestic Theater, their presence may only be revealed to the worthy and never to the eyes profane.